that people aren't rallying and saying the CMHC needs to be shut down. It needs to be stopped. It doesn't need to exist. Obviously, it's failed in terms of getting housing affordability and succeeded in making housing more expensive. So what do Canadians want out of an organization which ensures subprime loans, backing it with your money? With stats like that, do you think it's a good idea to start lending money? Hey, you want some money for some development when your volumes are down like 87% year over year? That sounds like a great idea. And people don't know that this going on. Could the condo market in Canada be about to cause a banking crisis, with RBC seeing $596 billion in loans turn over this year for renewal? So what is really going to happen? And you've got the condo market and what's happening there, which we have to talk about, because the risk here in the banking system, well, you're going to be able to see it. It's in plain sight right now.
Yes, there is a reset. They will be facing a higher interest rate.
All in, Canadian bank loans for real estate development double in 1 year. So you're going to want to see this chart first, because it is absolutely crazy. So if you look at what's happened over the past couple of years, the real estate lending was going up until 2023, where it just absolutely skyrocketed. And we're not stupid here. We know why this has happened. It's because the condo market is a complete show across Canada and people aren't buying this. So basically, you've got banks doing all these fraudulent things like blanket appraisals in order to keep these developers afloat. But we know this is just a major crisis in the making here. And unless you think the economy is going to get better, unless you think more people and more investors are going to be coming into the market to scoop up all these condos, then this is a big risk for the banking system, as you're about to see.
Our economy is very strong.
So the key point here that I want to make is you basically got the loans now at $85.1 billion. So you've got the loans to these developers from the major big banks at $85.1 billion. Now, most of these big banks have over $500 billion at least in loans outstanding. But here's the thing that I want to point out to you. So we go over to Investing Pro here, Warren AI, and basically I've got it to create this table here of the loan loss provisions for each bank here. And you can see, like, you look at some of these loan loss provisions. Let's take CIBC, for example, at $2 billion. You know, if their lending is $20 billion, it only takes 10% of that loan portfolio to go wrong, which is highly likely given the environment we're in, and that's their loan loss provisions wiped out in one. And if you want access to Warren AI, by the way, there's an affiliate link in the description below, and Investing Pro also has a summer sale on right now, so it's the cheapest that you can get it if you're interested in this. The developer lending has surged, and you can see from the loan loss provisions that this is a big risk for the bank. So Canada's chartered bank loans for real estate development are surging. The segment climbed 20% plus $14.6 billion to $85.1 billion in Q1 2025, doubling, up 105.4% from last year. I mean, that is crazy growth given this segment, but this is all the risk. They're doing this not because they want to do this, it's because they have to do this, and it's a can-kicking process that's going on here. But get this, once again, thanks to the CMHC, it's the taxpayer who will be on the hook for this, because take a look at this. Traditionally, chartered banks avoided risky builder developer loans due to default risk. This forced developers towards expensive secondary market capital, private equity, syndicates, etc. As a result, chartered bank loans for builders and developers remain largely stagnant until they suddenly tripled over the past 5 years. Why? And it's because of these basic programs that CMHC has put in place here. So once again, the taxpayer-funded CMHC is just a real estate industry slush fund. I mean, this is how corrupt the Canadian government is. It's really infuriating that people aren't rallying and saying the CMHC needs to be shut down. It needs to be stopped. It doesn't need to exist. Obviously, it's failed in terms of getting housing affordability and succeeded in making housing more expensive. So what do Canadians want out of an organization which ensures subprime loans, backing it with your money? I mean, it's absolutely crazy. But this is the reality of what's going on in Canada. So what about all these loans going to these developers into a market that is completely the bed? I mean, the market in Toronto and the GTA, where a lot of these condo buildings and condo towers are, is just terrible. It is a complete show.
It's the latest warning from the home building industry about an impending cliff for construction.
We're seeing sales have stopped.
The industry says even as interest rates, the cost of materials, and municipal taxes have decreased, buyers still aren't biting.
And it's not just the condo market, it's also single family homes. So we'll get into that. So Toronto new home sales fall to record low, just 42 condos sold in the city. And we're going to get into the stats on that for the new developers. So basically you can see what's happening with the prices. Prices have come down significantly for single family homes. Condos have come down significantly and they're now trending sideways. Once again, I want to just outline here, even if they trend sideways for the next 5 years, they didn't really trend sideways. We're talking about nominal prices. People's purchasing power is being destroyed year over year, every single year. So that means that even if these go sideways, the purchasing power of people take their money away from that condo market is way less, meaning they're losing even more in real terms. And that's really the crash, which people don't know about or understand. People just really think of nominal prices, but it's really important to think of real prices. So the Greater Toronto new home prices are still trending lower, but one segment showed signs of firming, and we'll get to why that's not really true, and even they point that out. So the price of a single family home fell 1.6%, nearly $25,000 to $1.51 million in May, bringing prices 6.6% lower than last year. Since hitting a record high in 2022, the single family benchmark has dropped more than 20% and is back to where it was in 2021. Even with the correction, prices are still double where they were 10 years ago. And that is very interesting because you have to highlight that point for a reason. And the reason is it shows how far these prices can really go down, because is $1.51 million really affordable to the average household in Toronto? Absolutely not. Nobody can afford that. So it's just going to take a long time for that to correct to what people can afford, because the investors are gone. They've deserted the market and they know what a shit show it's become. And they haven't just deserted Toronto and even Canada, they've deserted Mexico and they've vanished from everywhere. And it's really just due to the global economy, which is getting worse. And then condo apartments saw some relief from declines, with prices actually rising to $1.02 million in May. They remain 2.2% lower than last year and over 20% below the record high reached in 2022. But again, they point out the volume of condo sales makes the pricing really misleading at this point, because there's not enough sales going on that you'll get an accurate number, because the volume is so low in that market. And then these are the new home sales, and you've just got to see this is just absolutely tanked here. So Greater Toronto new home sales hit a record low for an 8th consecutive month. Developers sold just 345 new homes in May 2025, down 64% from last year and 87% below the 10-year average. So guys, I want you to tell me, with stats like that, do you think it's a good idea to start lending money? Hey, you want some money for some development when your volumes are down like 87% year over year? That sounds like a great idea. I mean, the government, the nerve, the stupidity, and people don't know that this is going on. Exactly why I'm here on this channel is because of that. More and more people can get woken up to this bullshit. And guys, I hate to tell you this. It doesn't matter if this was conservatives or it was Mark Carney. It would be the same bullshit going on. And this is the thing, even as Elon Musk has pointed out in the United States, whether you like him or don't like him, I'm neutral on the matter, but he is right. It's a uni party, and it's a uni party in Canada too. It's just that people don't realize it. It's just the face and the facade, and the marketing is different. And that's just to really make you think, oh yeah, these people are more aligned with my values, when actually behind the scenes, they're doing the same shit. Do you really think Pierre and the Conservatives would have got rid of CMHC? No. In fact, I think they would have leaned more into it than even the Liberals, because I think Pierre was more pro-housing than even the Liberals was, because neither parties understand what is going on in the housing markets. They're politicians at the end of the day, not economists. And even economists are schooled in the School of Economics for morons, essentially. My God, that was a rant and a half, so I apologize for that. So Greater Toronto developers saw just 137 condo sales in May, down 74% from last year and 93% below the 10-year average.
There's up to 30% failure rate amongst closings.
So I want to circle back here to this chart. And if you look at the past 10 years here and what's happened, they've been ramping this up year upon year, and now it's absolutely skyrocketed. Do you really think that this is a good time to do that? I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. And we're going to get on to the bank risk, because you need to hear about that. So we'll do that last at the end. I've got all the risk insights that Warren AI put for what's going on with the Canadian banks and how this risk actually translates into possibly a risk on their balance sheet. So anyway, basically you can see here, Toronto home sales absolutely tanking, especially when it comes to new developers where this lending is going on. Toronto says it needs 20K plus new condos per year. It only sold 42 in May, not 42,000, just 42 units. I mean, this is just incredible. Developers in the city of Toronto just sold 42 new condo apartments in May, down 69% from last year, also considered a slow year. To give context to just how slow this is, 97.4% below May 2021, which is just crazy and just shows you, I mean, that was just peak bubble, so you can't really compare it there. But still, 69% year over year from an already bad year. I mean, it's no wonder that the prices are getting misleading at this point. And with the sales tanking so much, I mean, there's a price for everything. And it's really the price discovery that is not happening in the housing market, not happening in the condo market, because there's a lot of sellers that are in denial. And me and John Flynn, we spoke about that and where we both think the market is. And, it's when you get into that fear stage, which generally happens when the banks don't want to lend anymore, that is when you really see the prices drop, because then people have that fear that they might never sell and they might be losing the home. And then a lot of them end up in that position anyways. But it's going to be really interesting to see whether we're going to tilt into that this year, next year, the following year. Really hard to tell until it actually happens. So Toronto freehold market then versus now. 3 months ago, the detached was at 1.713 million. Now it's at 1.593 million. So you've just got massive drops in 90 days, as Shazzy's pointing out here. Highly recommend you follow him. Amazing insights and stuff that he's putting on. So it just kind of shows you what is really going on there in the market. And then another thing that I want to show you, which I think is incredibly interesting, is, even Bloomberg, even the mainstream media is coming online and reporting about this. Toronto developers stay afloat borrowing against unsold condos, which are just never going to sell. I mean, this has been done. It's been done in China. We've had extremely leveraged developers, and how did that work out in China? Did not work out well, did it? Ended up with lots of skyscrapers just being outright demolished because they were never going to get finished, and lots of empty cities and ghost cities essentially because of these developers go under. And basically, Toronto developers are increasingly seeking inventory loans to borrow against unsold units in their properties, with 60% 50% of financing requests now being for such loans compared to almost none a year ago. So again, the increase in borrowing by these developers is signaling distress. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work this out. The banks are doing it because they think there's no risk in it because it's all on the taxpayer. And you don't really know that. You can't really assume it just because of these programs, because the government, they write their own rules on what the they're doing, and I wouldn't take anything they say at their word or even trust them, even if it's written on paper and it's in a program, because if the sentiment shifts and people are like, I don't want to bail out these bad loans from these banks, then the government will be like, we're not doing it. We're not insuring all these loans. So I think the banks personally are playing with fire with this. And, you know, young Canadians are 7 times more likely to default on their mortgage payments. And you're seeing the risk there that is jumping significantly as well. Take a listen to this quickly. Young Canadians aged 30 and under are failing to make payments on their mortgages at a rate 7 times higher than the rest of the population, according to TransUnion. The report, which analyzed credit trends for younger consumers in the first quarter of 2025, found 29-year-olds and 30-year-olds had the worst mortgage delinquency rates at 1% and 1.1%, nearly 10 times the average rate, which I don't even believe that bullshit rate, but whatever. The average delinquency rate of mortgage holders between 18 and 30 was 0.84%. In May, Equifax report found that the severe delinquency rate, which is when the consumers have missed payments for more than 90 days, was 0.24% in the first quarter of 2025, 72% increase from the same period in 2024. And again, we're talking about really old data. And you know, this is what's happening with youth unemployment. So it's kind of no wonder that that is going on, because people who are in the younger segment of the population, they're the ones who are struggling to find work. And you know, Canada is one of the worst countries for that. It has the fastest increasing youth unemployment in the whole of the OECD countries. So it shows you what's going on there. And then let's talk about real quick what is going on with these banks and whether there's any risk there with these development loans. So the big 5, Royal Bank of Canada, TD, Scotiabank, BMO, and CIBC, are all operating with eye-popping leverage. High leverage amplifies returns in good times, but in a shrinking economy, it turns small shocks into existential threats. With Canadian GDP growth slowing and mortgage renewals looming, pressure on loan books is mounting. Canadian banks are notorious for their reliance on domestic lending, especially residential mortgages. Royal Bank of Canada, for instance, has $596 billion in fixed rate mortgages up for renewal, and that amount dwarfs many national economies. So over $500 billion in loans that are up for renewal, and not just any loans, residential mortgages. When the economy contracts, defaults rise, collateral values drop, and highly leveraged banks have little room to maneuver. As a result, even minor upticks in delinquency rates or loan losses can cascade through their capital structures. And think about what we just talked about. What's going on with delinquency rates there, and also what's going on with all these developer loans. And you can see the risk is right there in plain sight. It's not hidden. So if they ever come out and say, like the Bank of Canada, oh, we never saw this one coming, then you know, oh yeah, we saw this coming and I'm just a schmuck on YouTube. Analysts are increasingly warning of a technical recession in Canada, meaning 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. The consequences: payment shocks for borrowers as mortgages renew at higher rates, higher provisions for credit losses and potential deterioration in asset quality, compressed net interest margins if the Bank of Canada cuts rates to spur growth, squeezing profitability further. And that's something you don't hear about a lot, isn't it? That if the Bank of Canada actually cuts rates, that could actually be bad for the banks, especially if lending isn't booming because you've got such a deterioration in the economy. So I think we really have to monitor what goes on with the banks, but I don't think earnings or anything like that is really a good indication, because banks can fit fiddle things beyond belief, as we know. I mean, at the end of the day, these chartered banks are the creators of most of the money in the Canadian money supply, and that's what people really don't understand there. So if you want access to this, by the way, Investing Pro has their summer sale on right now, so it's the cheapest time to get this, and it's really good. Warren AI, I'm using it all the time, as you've probably seen in the videos. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, highly recommend that you check out this video here. Affiliate link for Warren AI and Investing Pro in the description. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.